This is a Windows phone. You don't see a lot of these nowadays, but at the time this was one gem of a smartphone. The sleek Metro UI, the animations, the hardware and the build quality of a phone was way ahead of its time. But for all its ambition, Windows Phone never quite became the success story it was meant to be. What exactly went wrong? Why it did not appeal to the consumers? Why it couldn't capture the market? Hi everyone, this is Karan and today I'll be telling you about You might think that Android and iOS killed the Windows Phone. Well, for most of the part that's true, but what if I tell you Microsoft had their hands in the mobile industry way before Android and iOS came? When the mobile first came into the market in 1980s, it was quite confusing. Is it a small computer or is it some productivity tool? Not a lot of people knew. But broadly, mobiles at early stage could be categorized into two categories: feature phones and personal digital assistant. Feature phones would do all the communication stuff like call and messages, and the personal digital assistant or the PDAs were more of a productivity tool. They would do tasks like emails, calendar management, internet browsing and all that. Some companies were doing feature phones and some companies were doing PDAs, and Microsoft was making personal digital assistants. And the operating system they had on these PDAs was called Windows CE. The Windows CE was Microsoft's entry point in the mobile industry. There was not many players in the market. While Palm OS was the biggest player in the mobile industry, Microsoft was also enjoying the fair share, and they were constantly growing. The reason I'm telling you this is to show the fact that Microsoft was one of the earliest guys in the market, and despite being early on the market, they couldn't pivot into the industry. This was mainly due to their direction in the industry and their point of view towards mobile as a device. You see, Microsoft, since they were following the path of PDA, viewed mobile phone as a small productivity tool, a small email machine. They had this rigid mentality of looking at mobiles only as a productivity device. In fact, the CE in Windows CE stood for Compact Edition. Meanwhile, some other guys who were specifically more into feature phones than PDAs had different view, and these people come together and formed the Symbian OS. Symbian didn't saw mobile just as a productivity tool. It offered a lot: customization, user-friendly UI, multimedia capabilities, network, GPS, games, ecosystem and a lot. This appealed to customers more than just email machines, and it was an instant hit. Symbian quickly rose to popularity. While Symbian was constantly growing, Microsoft mobile market went through a lot of changes. They renamed Windows CE as Pocket PC. It didn't work, and Symbian continued to pop everywhere. And Microsoft, trying to amend things in 2003, renamed Pocket PC as Windows Mobile. You see, in this whole struggle against Symbian, Microsoft's view on mobile wasn't very clear. Windows Mobile 6 had three versions: Standard, Professional and Classic. Why do you need three versions? They were clearly having a hard time not viewing mobile explicitly as a productivity tool. They also didn't seem to let go of their cash cows: desktop Windows. Windows 6 literally had a start menu. I mean, why do you need a start menu on such a small screen? To maintain resemblance or ease of use? Aside from the fact that they were still trying to milk Windows, they weren't the most developer-friendly company out there. Developer tools for CE was considered no less than dreadful. So to sum up, the mentality of viewing mobile explicitly as productivity machines made Microsoft lose market share to Symbian. And despite being one of the early adopters, they couldn't pivot into the mobile industry. And after not being able to pivot into the mobile industry, everything went downhill for them. Symbian was everywhere. It was enjoying the biggest market share of the mobile OS industry. Until
this is a day I've been looking forward to for 2.5 years. Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. So, three things: a widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communications device. These are not three separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone.
in 2007, the iPhone came along and disrupted everything. It changed the concept of smartphone. The newly released iOS was one of the most user-friendly devices out there and was able to do everything a computer could do back then. It offered gesture, multi-touch, app ecosystem, multimedia capabilities, and a lot. This changed the whole dynamics of the industry. Everything was so on point that it appealed to consumers to next level.
Meanwhile.
Before the release of iOS, Andy Rubin was seeking investor for Android. And while a lot of companies rejected Andy, Google bought it for $50 million. And they had plans to release an Android-based phone with physical keyboard and non-touchscreen. But seeing the iPhone, they changed the documentation to touchscreen to be included. So you could say that Google recognizes changes in the mobile industry and work accordingly. Not only Google, but Nokia and BlackBerry followed the path of iPhone and shifted their focus on screen touch phones. And while they were catching up, Android first phone came into the market. With Google, Android quickly evolved. They adopted iPhone's aesthetic quite fast, grid icons, multi-touch and gestures. And they went 1 mile extra. Unlike any other, they made their code open source. What open source meant is that the software became public, meaning anybody on the internet could see it. For other OS like Symbian and BlackBerry, manufacturers had to pay some money, but the same manufacturers could get the Android for free. You see, the release of iPhone made a lot of companies see the transformative potential of mobile OS industry. And after the release of iPhone, a lot of companies actually adjusted their strategies according to it. But the Microsoft was quite reluctant to embrace the changing tide.
Steve, let me ask you about the iPhone and the Zune, if I may. The Zune was getting some traction, then Steve Jobs goes to Macworld and he pulls out this iPhone. What was your first reaction when you saw that?
$500 fully subsidized with a plan? I said, that is the most expensive phone in the world, and it doesn't appeal to business customers because it doesn't have a keyboard, which makes it not a very good email machine. Now, it may sell very well or not. We have our strategy. We've got great Windows mobile devices in the market today. You can get a Motorola Q phone now for $99. It's a very capable machine. It'll do music. It'll do internet. It'll do email. It'll do instant messaging. So I kind of look at that and I say, well, I like our strategy. I like it a lot.
In 2007, Steve Ballmer said that there's no chance that Apple is going to get any significant market share. No chance. But as the time passed, iOS and Android grew into popularity, and Symbian started to lose share. Microsoft eventually started learning from their mistakes, and in 2010, they introduced a new successor to Windows Mobile, Windows 7. Windows Phone 7 arrived in 2010, after 2 years of iPhone and Android ran. This new Windows Phone had fantastic design called Metro UI, and Metro UI was absolutely bang on. They had the functional UI which was actually better and different from its competitors. They also focused on making app development easier, and everything was on point. But they were little late to the party. By the time that Windows Phone 7 was in the market, Google and iOS had captured a lot of market share, and they were direct competitors of Microsoft in the mobile segment. iOS offering a tight ecosystem and Google offering services. And Microsoft was actually trying to do both, services as well as ecosystem. And to make the ecosystem thing efficient, Microsoft released Windows Phone 8 in same month when they released Windows Phone 8 for PC. The Windows Phone 8 was based on anti-kernel components shared with Windows 8. These new changes brought something called Windows Runtime. This transition represented significant shift for developers, particularly for those who were adjusted to Windows embedded CE development. Developers had to learn new development tools, APIs, and the design principles specific to Windows 8 platform. This introduced new trouble for developers. Learning something new which didn't have the highest demand wasn't very sensible for them. Apart from the developers having problem learning new things for the small market, there was one other problem Microsoft was having: hardware. You see, Apple was making their own hardware and software. Android was open source, so any manufacturer could get it for free. But Microsoft Windows Phone wasn't free, so they were having trouble getting hardware manufacturers. And to solve these problems, they sealed a Nokia deal. In 2014, Microsoft bought Nokia's mobile division. This deal was supposed to give Microsoft a dedicated and prominent hardware manufacturer. Some good marketing was also done to get the word out about Nokia Lumia phones.
Beautiful day as we come together to celebrate the
Excuse me.
commitment of these.
Would you mind moving your enormous phone?
You mean the enormously awesome Galaxy?
Search One Trick Pony.
Aren't you a little young to have an iPhone?
You want to go?
iSheet, copy bots.
Autocorrect this.
Is there an app for that?
Search karate. Karate!
You think if they knew about the Nokia Lumia, they'd stop fighting all the time?
I don't know. I think they kind of like fighting.
The Windows Phone Nokia Lumia 920, Engadget's Reader's Choice Smartphone of the Year.
Nokia's Lumia smartphones were some of the most recognizable and widely available Windows Phone devices, and they were trying to help increase platform visibility and market share. Nokia also brought some of the new things on board, such as PRU camera technology, advanced imaging capabilities, and sleek design. Microsoft's focus was to streamline the next version of Windows from 3 operating systems into one single converged operating system for screens of all sizes. In 2015, Microsoft dropped Windows Phone 10 with purpose of Universal App. This Universal App was to help develop apps that would run across all Windows platforms. Not only this, but Microsoft also introduced Project Islandwood and Astoria to bridge the gap between iOS and Android devices. These were a set of tools and technologies that would help iOS and Android developers to bring their apps on Windows Phone. So as far as the Microsoft catch-up game goes, one could say that they did pretty well, right? Universal apps, cross-platform support, and the hardware need. Everything was on point, but spoiler side, it didn't work for them. Did they not have everything a user wanted, or did the competition did them dirty? Well, the first reason is that they were too late. By the time they had something on their site to propose to customers, the market was already captured by two giants, Android and iOS. Apart from being late, Windows 7 to Windows RT transition was another headache for developers. They had to learn new stacks, new APIs, design principle and architecture to develop apps for Windows. Even if the developer went through all the trouble and got an app published somehow on the Windows Store, they were more likely to earn less than they could have earned on App Store or the Play Store. This is because of the AdWords. You see, most of the developers generate revenue from ads. Ads are put up by companies to attract a crowd. But guess what? Windows Phone had no crowd. So no company ads, which meant no ad revenue, and which meant no developers. So Microsoft essentially was stuck in catch-22 problem. Crowd wasn't there because of lack of apps, and apps were not there because of lack of crowd. The big companies like Snapchat, Instagram and YouTube were hesitant to put their apps on the platform. The reason they argued was less market size of Windows phones. Making app for smaller market size wouldn't have been beneficial for them. Well, at least this is what they said. And this was the rise of social media era. Everyone and their cat was on Snapchat, Instagram and YouTube. But Windows Phone didn't have most of those. To overcome this, they actually made their own YouTube app. But Google asked them to remove it, stating it violates their policy. Eventually the official YouTube app did come in 2014, but it was stripped of many features. So, in the era of social media, Windows Phone had nothing to serve to its users. Apart from this lack of app problems, competition also played a role in ruling out the existence of Windows Phone. Google services such as Google Search, Maps, Drives, all that were direct competitors of Bing Search, Bing Maps and OneDrive. Google capitalized well on the situation. Ever since the release of Windows Phone, they made it difficult to have popular apps such as YouTube and Maps on Windows Phone. And by lack of apps, Windows Phone didn't appeal to the customers. They say to survive in the industry, you either have to be first, best or cheapest. Windows Phone were none of these things. iOS was best and first, and for manufacturers, Android was the cheapest. And since Apple was building its own hardware, manufacturers had two options: a free Android, or another one was Windows Phone, which required a licensing fee. Apart from the licensing fee, Microsoft had also imposed minimum hardware requirements, such as developing UEFI boot and driver compatibility. While this was good motive to give standard and consistent experience, it wasn't very convenient for manufacturers compared to other options. So basically, manufacturers had to do all these things and on top of that had to pay to get Windows Phone software on their product. And by the time Microsoft got Nokia on board, the market dynamics had changed tremendously. Google's strategy for making Android open source worked well for them, as the source of revenue for them wasn't making Android but instead was Google services. So as the time went by, it became more and more difficult for Microsoft to stay in the competition. In 2016, Microsoft market share dropped below 1%, and the ever-decreasing market share made Microsoft pull the plug on Windows phones. Microsoft stopped the mobile division and sold Nokia to HMD Global in 2016. After these, the support slowly died out for Windows Phone, and in 2020, Microsoft announced that they wouldn't be supporting the Windows Phone anymore. So to conclude everything, these are the main reasons which caused the fall of Windows Phone. Missed pivotal opportunity. In the beginning, Windows Phone had a good market share, and there were not many strong competitors at the time. Their mentality towards mobile as a device made them lose an opportunity where they could have created a monopoly in the mobile OS market, not accepting the changing tide. When the iPhone came, a lot of companies strategized their position in the mobile OS market, but Microsoft didn't feel the need to worry or to change their strategies. This led them to lose the market share to companies who adjusted to the transformation. Beef with developers. I mean, changing APIs, design principle every now and then while trying to do something better didn't settle well with the developers. And if that's not enough, there wasn't a good ad revenue for developers to put their apps on the store. Competition billions. Well, let's face it, iPhone was out there to stay, and Google strategized well by making Android open source. It became easily available to all the manufacturers, and it worked well for them. And last but not the least, and probably the only reason a normal consumer would tell you they didn't use a Windows Phone was lack of apps. There weren't any apps to use. It may be due to competitor exploit, or it just may be due to small market size to make a good revenue stream. Whatever it is, with lack of apps, Windows Phone stood no chance. So yeah, that's the fall of Windows Phone. I do miss the Windows Phone, and there's not a lot you can do with this currently, given its current stage. But I'll tell you what, if Microsoft decides to bring back the Windows Phone, I will be one of the first to pre-order it. Thanks for watching. Leave a like and sub if you enjoyed the video. Comment your thoughts. This is correct, and I'll see you in the next one.